morning. Today we're here with Dr. Anil Ranawat, who's the chief of the sports medicine division for hip and knee at the Hospital for Special Surgery.
Thank you, Peter.
It's great to have you here. We've known each other a few years now.
Yes, we do, definitely.
And we've definitely spent some time through the years looking at the different technologies that you're using in your practice. I'd love to share that with the audience today around kind of like walking through the ecosystem and talking about how you use some of the different technologies in your practice today. And just for full disclosure, it's not always in Hatch. Very often it's not related to in Hatch.
Sure.
But I'm really interested in hearing what a surgeon like yourself is experiencing, what you think is interesting to the future.
Yeah.
Let's start with the planning side.
Yeah, I mean, I think the evolution of the orthopedic implant market has been fascinating the last 10 years. There's been a lot of change. You know, historically, it was just about the implants, you know, and tinkering with the implants to make them a little better. Then they got into some instrumentation, very mechanical instrumentation, how to make the operation a little easier to do with different types of what we call jigs. And that was the basis of the evolution of this field for 20 years almost. And majority of preoperative templating was very rudimentary, was with an X-ray and with piece of plastics with, you know, implant sizes, which was the implant. The plastics could be different magnifications, the X-ray could be different magnifications, but there was still templating. It was still very critical for any procedure, whether it's templating is critical, whether you're doing a fracture case to template all the pieces, whether you're doing a total knee to template the size, or you're doing an osteotomy using rudimentary X-rays to figure out what's your correction angle. What we saw in the last, say, 10 years now was the evolution of, you know, better imaging systems. So CAT scan and 3D CAT scanning was a huge step forward. And then we got also to digital X-rays, and we could do some templating on digital X-rays which could control magnification better. So X-ray templating, I think, was a huge step forward for all three, four, and you could throw in foot and ankle, almost every orthopedic discipline. But then once we got to CAT scan, and then you get to 3D modeling of CAT scan, things change. We could start templating on a computer screen, and you could start spinning your bones in 3 planes, and then matching whether it's a knee replacement to that bone or matching and getting a precise osteotomy to that bone. You know, because realize we were living in the XY coordinate system, but we operate on the XYZ coordinate system. And so 3D CT really, and you could say 3D MR, but 3D MR really hasn't panned out as much as 3D CT, has really kind of changed the landscape. That then built concepts of PSI guides. You know, I could take a 3D CAT scan of a knee and then build a guide that's a jig that's designed for Peter V or Anil R. And the PSI revolution grew in orthopedics. And some people thought it was better, some people thought it was worse. A lot of literature came out there. But clearly there's a lot of pros and cons to it. But we're certainly evolving into this PSI kind of world. This also then started saying, okay, with 3D CAT scan, I can do a PSI world or I can do a robotic world. And then the robots have come. And just how we were here maybe 5 or 8 years ago when you had an early robot and there were some early robots, and most people with more gray hair, although I have gray hair now, will say the robots are not going to go anywhere. Now there's about 10 robots in the system. So I say imitation is the best flattery. So I think, you know, the way this field is going is using alternative technologies, digital templating on a computer system, robotic technology, patient-specific guides, patient-specific maybe implants. This is how this field's all evolving. Having reduced sterilization cost, you know, having a knee in a box versus 80 trays, which needs much more overhead. Bioburden now because we're opening trays that are dirty. There's so many kind of cost savings that I see this field going into. And it's a gradual evolution that we started with just an implant. And now we're talking about, wow, the implant is almost less important. It's all this other technology to get to putting that implant in the right way. So that was a very long-winded answer.
No, it's a great answer. I had 5 questions during it, and you kept answering it, so I was just sitting here. So I'd say that you're working on a few different technologies now with different companies. I'd love for you to kind of share. I'm pretty sure you worked on the first patient-specific knee back in the day. Mm-hmm. You implanted some of the earliest Conformis products, right? I'd love to hear your story and your evolution of these different products.
I think Conformis is a very interesting company. They're the first to the market of using 3D CT digital templating, 3D CT PSI guides, and patient-specific implants. And a lot of companies went with the PSI guides and the digital templating, but most companies did not go patient-specific implants. What we found out with patient-specific implants is you want them to be specific to the patient to a point, but not completely. And if you have a dysplastic trochlea, well, that's why your patellofemoral joint failed. So I don't want to recreate what was bad in the first place. So, we know the way outliers, and that's what we're all talking about. We're talking about establishing a data library of orthopedic bones, and once you get this data library, you can say, wow, the middle, this 2 standard deviations where you want to be. You want to reduce the outliers on both scenarios. So that's something we learned a lot, and also learned that it's not just the bony operation, but the soft tissue balancing, with the knee is clearly important. So I thought it was a very interesting concept, and it's just like, the first cell phone wasn't the iPhone, and it doesn't mean though cell phones are bad. Right now, no one is putting down their cell phone, and I see PSI instrumentation and a certain degree of patient-specific implants is going to be more and more the wave of the future, just to decrease inventory costs. We don't need to have, it's the same idea now for your clothes, right? Historically, you'd go to Bloomingdale's and they'd have to carry 1,000 sizes. The future is now, you go to your favorite website, you know what your suit is, what it is, and it's quickly made to order, and you'll get your suit delivered the next day. And if it's not, then you can, return it. So,
absolutely.
As we see it in so many other industries, inventory management is a huge cost savings.
It makes or breaks every medical device company. It's the challenges I saw when I was at Stryker, when I was at Tournier. We saw these problems really hinder growth, adoption of a product. You just can't get the sets out to the people who need it.
Right.
And then as we look at rest of world, which is top of your agenda as well, right? Top of mind. How do we get this across the globe at an affordable price that works for everyone?
Right. And so I really believe if you want to use total knee or osteotomy, having a knee in a box with all the instrumentation and the implant that's pretty specific to that patient, or having an osteotomy in a box, is really the future, certainly for the third world country. But in reality, I used to think of it as a third world country market. It's a first world country market, because guess what? Amazon's not a third world company, and that's their whole, it's distribution, not inventory that you want to. And the other way I see it is that the other big driver here is ambulatory surgery arthroplasty, where they don't have the room. And so that is clearly where arthroplasty is going. CMS is pushing it. There's about 20 lectures here today about that concept. Again, another big driver for 3D templating and knee in a box kind of technologies.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned HTO. You do some interesting work in that space too.
Yeah, I think osteotomy is well behind knee replacement just because of the size of the market, it's obvious. But it's really an operation that relies on bony cuts. So if there's ever a role of using advanced technologies to get things correct, osteotomy, fracture care, tumor, those really where this field will all go. It's less of a soft tissue procedure. So say an ACL, the problem with an ACL is that it's not just putting it in the right bony spot every time. There's so many soft tissue variables. But for an osteotomy, it's just a bony cut. Get the right bony cut, then let's use better technology than what we were taught, which was using a Bovie cord to check your alignment, which is what we're still almost doing.
In a lot of ways.
Correct.
It's still going back to the marking of Whiteside's line
Yes.
for a knee replacement. And
Using the epicondylar axis, all these things that my father invented, but it's like 40 years ago.
exactly.
We're not driving cars the same 40 years ago.
No.
But knee replacement, if you think about it, now less so in the last 5-10 years, but before that, for the first 30 years, didn't change that much. The principles were still the same.
They were. I feel like there was a lot of empirical evidence brought forth by folks like your father that figured out how they should do surgery and how they think about implant design. And we were very fortunate to have people that really looked at that and spent their whole lives developing that. What we're finding now is that a lot of that empirical thought and evidence is driving actual correct assumptions. Like they made the right assumptions back then, but now we can actually prove it with the algorithms and prove it with optimization. It's incredible to see how much we've done. When I was designing implants 25, 30 years ago, when I first started on the knee side, it was kind of like guesswork in a lot of ways. We were saying, hey, I think let's have this many sizes and let's have this many increments in millimeters. And there was a lot of work that involved what people had done before. We didn't have that access to anatomy, but now we have incredible databases of bones. We're able to run through and produce models that understand the geometry. And we're really excited about what that leads to, because we have all this geometry. We can feed that into whatever system you're using.
Correct, and I think a perfect example or another scientific breakthrough would be, let's just say you're talking about knee replacement and you're saying this knee replacement has anterior knee pain and we think the patellofemoral joint is suboptimal. Let's widen the trochlear groove, let's lengthen it, let's do a couple design-related implants. Okay, you do that. Maybe you do some biomechanical testing, cadaver testing, okay. But ultimately, you got to put thousands in and see how the patients do, which is extremely expensive and can be catastrophic, right? Now, with your database, you can do virtual surgeries and have 3D modeling and then have 3D simulation, and you're saving potential disasters, and it's really improving patient care. Now, obviously, nothing is tried and true as doing the operation and following your patients, but the amount of information we can help and save and protect patients with this library and with doing virtual surgeries, I think is another profound impact factor of this technology.
That's a great point. We look at where we started. We were, in 2007, we developed a Tournier shoulder system. Now it's called Stryker Ascend Flex. And when we did that, we had 35 CT scans to work from. And it was hard to analyze and measure and cut the bone up and figure out all the measurements, right? Fast forward, we did a project with one of our customers on the shoulder, and we were able to create, from a small database of a few hundred, we were able to generate thousands and thousands. We could have kept going into millions. It just wasn't statistically necessary. But we could create almost an infinite amount of cases to virtually train on and practice on. And that's been the incredible part of this. That's been important. How do you see this all moving with sensors and robotics? Like, what do you think is happening there?
Yeah, I think right now our OR has a lot of wires, right? We're videotape right now, and there's still about wires, right?
A few wires here and there.
And so I see E&M systems, and I truly see, how our phones have become wireless, and how cloud technology will become wireless. So I think a lot of arrays in robots with sensors are great, but I think the sensors are going to become wireless. I do a lot of arthroscopy. We have cords, right? I think you're going to have wireless cameras You're going to have wireless tools, and then wireless sensors. And so that, to me, having an OR that's smaller and integrated to, I would say, a cloud, where the cloud has, a screen down where I can move that screen anywhere in the cloud virtually, which is my X-ray monitor, that, and it's my templating monitor over there, and then I maybe have a VR headset on, and ideally just a pair of glasses on. That's where we're going. Obviously, we were all kind of nerds when we were kids.
You have to be where we are today, right?
And I'm forgetting his name, but from Star Trek, the Doctor, and his magic, his magic little device. So, we're not going to be there anytime soon, but using all these, I think, wireless technology, as much as we see our home is wireless. Why is our home wireless before the, taking care of human beings wireless? It's kind of, it shows you where our priorities are. Is watching football is more important than operating on people.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. I'd say that over the past few years, so you said over the past 10, but even over the past few, 2-3 years, it seems like we keep making big strides. If you look at AAOS from a few years ago to now, a lot more software companies, a lot more technology companies showing up. One of the things we're very focused on is that ecosystem and building that. What are your thoughts on ecosystems?
Yeah, I think that's really, to me, the next level. The next level is going to be that you have an ecosystem or a cloud-based technology that's not necessarily married to one implant or one company, that, just how, the amount of technology has driven literally the US economy. Orthopedics has still been about plates, screws, and implants. And just like how the car industry is slowly realizing that the variance between the cars are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, it's going to be their ecosystem of how do I, turn my car on? How does my car can potentially drive to me? How can my car, its way system, its navigation, all these things, and that's how I see how the integration of the ecosystem, where a patient walks in and walks through a machine, just like in an airport. That's the X-ray machine. That immediately gets loaded to the system. An algorithm already defines that, they have grade 4 arthritis. This is what it is. The implant is already been processed to order once the doc verifies this and all that stuff, and that's how I see this ecosystem evolving to.
That's fantastic. Now, we're really excited about the future and glad to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks.